everyone. Thanks so much for joining me on the inaugural 10 before 10 show. I was going to ask you how it feels to be numero uno, but then I realized that's probably something you're already used to.
Oh, it was pretty exciting to be a part of it. I mean, over the last 4 weeks, I was part of the personal branding course run by Think Tank Social and AIS, and I really got a lot out of that. So to sort of keep expanding and working on that, I thought this was definitely a great opportunity. And, you know, it's always great to get involved with new things. So I put my hand up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had some of your colleagues in the last few weeks, but this was the first time I've actually done the video later in the day. So yeah, no, hopefully it'll go okay. Okay. Now you were just mentioning this morning that you took the TTS team through their paces for 10 before 10 earlier today. How did you find it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, of course, but I mean, I put together some exercises that I've done for years. And I mean, a lot of my strength program, which I do throughout the whole season, is essentially similar moves and skills to what we went through this morning, just by adding more weights to the sessions. So, I mean, they're movements that I've done that I think don't just relate to cycling, but can relate to sort of everyday things. So
Yeah.
I thought it was a good session, and I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I took away from it is that we've never done 3 sets of anything before. So that's something that I felt and my thighs felt. So good on you for that one. So how did the whole cycling thing start for you? Like, were you one of those kids that was just good at a number of sports and you had to decide between a few, which one will I go for? Or was it the moment you got on a bike, you just knew that was it for you?
Well, actually, so I was 14, and one of my school teachers suggested I go to a talent ID for Could Be Cyclists, run by the North Coast Academy of Sport in New South Wales. So I went along to that, and I was selected for the team, but I mean, there was 5 people selected, and it wasn't really a big deal because it wasn't anyone else who went. But what actually drew me to the sport and made me want to continue with it was that I actually wasn't very good at it to start with. And that was, I was good at other sports and did everything. And when I was younger, I was also a lot smaller than the other girls and boys at that stage. So I think that played a part. And it made me, I'm very competitive, and not being able to win and coming last actually really drove me to develop and push further with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that sort of took me through to the end of high school and then into the professional league after that.
Okay, so just like following on from that junior career, then at what point did you think that you might actually be able to take this passion to the pinnacle of the sport?
Yeah, so cycling's one of, there's not so many sports, I guess, that are truly professional in the sense that I race for a professional team and I'm paid to do that. So for me, I finished in year 11 and 12. So when I was 17 and 18, I represented Australia at the Junior World Championships. And then the following year, I was selected as part of the AIS squad, which is for road cycling, and there actually isn't a squad anymore for road cycling, but it was a development squad, and then I was in that squad for 2 years before progressing to a professional team. So now I'm based in Europe most of the time, not currently with what's going on in the world, but I race for a French based professional cycling team, and there's 13 women in my team. There's 3 Australians, 3 Scandinavians from Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, and 7 French riders.
Okay, so was it the moment you got the call up, I guess, to one of those the first professional team? That's when you went, I could really do something here. Was that the light bulb moment?
Yeah. I mean, my goal growing up, once I, committed to cycling, I guess, and was driven by that, was always to ride for the best team in the world. And I actually did that with my very first contract. I signed with the best team, the number 1 ranked team in the world, with the best riders in the world. So I got to learn directly from those riders, which was pretty exciting. And then from that squad where I've been for a few years, and then through different teams, it's sort of like any professional sport, you change teams through your career.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've gained a lot from all the different cultures as well. But then it's unique in the sense that we do come together as a country to race world championships or Olympic Games or major events. So we race the whole year for our professional team, and then we're selected to race in world championships for Australia.
Right, so they've got a world championship in cycling every year.
So there's a world
cool.
championship every year, and the Commonwealth Games every 4 years, and the Olympics every 4 years, but on alternate 4 years.
Okay, so because from what I understood, you don't actually compete in the velodromes, is that not right?
Yeah, so I compete on the road only, so it's like the Tour de France, but for women. So in Europe, I race all over the world, but mainly in Europe, around 50 to 60 days a year. And that's sort of, the season generally starts in Australia actually, which is really nice. So I have my national championships in the first week of January. I race a Tour Down Under, and then there's a big race on the Great Ocean Road the beginning of February, and then the European racing generally starts the end of February, and that continues until sort of generally till October. However, this year it's obviously a little bit different. Actually, this year, starting actually tonight, we're doing a virtual race where I will be racing from my home with my teammates.
That'll be a first?
Yeah, against, there's 9 women's teams racing, and it's live on Eurosport. So,
wow, got a big audience too.
Yeah, so the sport is sort of trying to make the most of it, and it gives our sponsors some coverage and things as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. Like, can you explain to us, like, what are the differences between the two styles of racing with the velodrome and the road racing, apart from the obvious one, you're outside, and why a cyclist would choose one format over the other?
So in Australia, track cycling is very big, but in the rest of the world, it's not as big. Road cycling is a lot bigger, but generally, so on the track, you've got track sprint, and that's events where Anna Mears really was very strong in when she was racing, and they're short events, like 200 meters to 500 meters only maximum. And then you have endurance track events also on the velodrome, and that's races that the blue ribbon event is the team pursuit, and that's where there's 4 riders and they race for 4 kilometers. So your maximum distance is 4 kilometers of a full gas effort. And they also have some races that are up to 20 or 30 kilometers in length, which might sound like a lot, but then when you come to what I do on the road, my races are, our world championship is 150 kilometers. And over very varied terrain. There could be mountains or small cobbled roads in any weather condition you can imagine, pretty much. So, and then we race multiple days in a row. So like the Tour de France, we have 10-day tours. Tour of Italy is very big, and there is meant to be an announcement soon that there'll be hopefully a Tour de France next year for the women. So, I mean, the distance is the main thing, and the terrain. We race up and down mountains. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I never thought about cobblestones before. They don't sound like fun.
I mean, it's a skill, that's for sure, how to ride them. But yeah, power is a big part of that.
Yeah, it's like in skiing, doing the bumps.
Yeah, that's it. And generally the cobbled races come in the European spring, so it's usually very bad weather as well, making that an extra challenge.
Good for crashes.
Yeah.
Yeah, spectator sport. And are there many riders that do both, that do the velodrome and, you know?
There is, but it is changing at the moment. Well, it is changing. So the track endurance riders can come across to the road and vice versa. However, we're starting to see Australia is really at the peak in track cycling. We're one of the favourite nations in major championships. And we're starting to see that the track endurance riders are not coming across to the road as much, and vice versa. And that's just because they're becoming so much more specific than they were even 10 years ago. So, for example, our current national coach on the road, he went to 4 Olympic Games on the track, and he raced a very long professional road career. However, he now is the one who states that the team pursuit is so specific that they can't really come back and forth. But you often see a lot of, in Australia in particular, riders have a track career and then come across to the road. But you don't see it with track sprinters. Someone like Anna Mears wouldn't come across to the road.
Right, yeah.
They're nearly completely different sports.
I guess it's like many things in life these days. Everyone's like developing their niche, and just doubling down on what they're best at. So makes sense.
Yeah, and then of course on the road we have also different skill sets, like the climbers that are purely focused on the mountains, and then riders that are good for the sprints, and riders that are good for the classics or things like that as well. So you sort of also have your niche on the road.
The niche within the niche.
Exactly.
So for those of you that don't know, that are watching or listening to this, the UCI is, I guess, the world governing body of cycling. Can you describe what life is like competing in the UCI series year after year, and some of the challenges and some of the best parts?
Yeah, so for me, it's changed a lot from when I started. When I started when I signed my first professional contract with a UCI women's team, it was sort of something I was grateful to have. Whether now, like this year is the first year that there's a lot of rights for women, and we've seen that we have a minimum wage now set with the World Tour teams. There's eight women's World Tour teams, and I'm part of one of those teams. And we have a lot of insurance benefits. We have maternity leave, like basic things that you'd think would be covered, but it's a women's sport and it's still developing. So it's been exciting to see those changes and that come forward, and that's a big part of it as well. So now we can make a living from it properly, and then you're going to see the quality and the depth just continue to grow, which is really exciting. And I think that one thing that goes side by that is television coverage. So having our races on television. They're
even ones that you're doing from your house.
Exactly. So now I have to double check I don't have a washing machine behind me or something, maybe.
Put your phone on silent.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I mean, for me, it's at 11:30 p.m. because we have to race in one time zone. So
of course, yeah.
It's a challenge for me. But yeah, I think seeing a lot of things progress, it's exciting racing as part of the UCI World Tour. And now we have different levels within the tour. I race in the top level, and you can't just come and compete in those races. The teams have to be asked, and they have to be at a certain level and have all those requirements I was going through before. So, I mean, it's going to take time to get to the same point as the men's, but it's definitely progressing at a fast rate. So that's exciting to see.
Right, that's interesting. So is it like the Formula One kind of system, or Formula Two, and where the better you do, teams could just pick you, at random because they think you've got what it takes, or is it more like a soccer league system in England where you if you're in the top two, you automatically get promoted, and vice versa if you're at the bottom?
So for the teams at the moment, there's 8 World Tour teams, and they want to have within 4 years, I think it's 20. Teams, but the sport isn't ready to have 20 teams yet at that level, like from a financial perspective, I think.
Yeah.
But it does say that in 4 years, the ranking system will be on ranking. So the top 20 teams will receive a license, I think, whether the rest won't. But then in terms of rider contracts, that's very much all behind the back and whisperings and agents, and there's no dates really that are meant to be. You're not meant to announce anything until the 1st of August, but it's all done by then. It's all behind closed doors and no one knows anything. So there's not really much of a system for rider agents and rider contracts.
So it sounds just like any normal sporting governing body then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now I'm guessing that over the years there's been plenty of highs and lows throughout your career. Can you give us the most memorable one of each? Are there two that particularly stick out?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest highs would have been when I signed my first contract. That was really exciting back in 2011. I signed for the #1 team in the world, and that was pretty cool. But I think I've had some pretty major injuries. I mean, it can always be worse, and I know a lot of riders that have had worse injuries, but I broke my arm 2 years ago in Amstel Gold Race and ripped half my face off, basically. And but to come back from that, and I took 2 victories later that year, which is a lot in cycling. Within one season, personally took 2 victories for my team after having 6 weeks off, and I now have a plate in my arm and a big scar on the hip.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah.
So, and I have some scarring on my face, but it's part of it. I don't have any memory at all of the crash, but it can happen. And I mean, crashing is part of our sport. and it can always be worse. And unfortunately, there are some pretty bad crashes every year, and it's sort of getting worse. But there's also some incredible highs. Like last year, I was part of the World Championship team for Australia, where Amanda Spratt, our team leader, finished with the bronze medal, which was really exciting and one of the best races of my career. So, I mean, it can go, you have incredible highs, but you also have incredible lows. But yeah, it's all part of it.
You never know what you're going to get week to week.
Exactly. And I mean, one thing that's sort of unique, I think, about our sport is it's a team sport. You need each other, but it's still an individual sport. So a lot of people see it as an individual sport, but you need your team. And then you can also have this aspect where your job might have been to look after somebody else at a certain point in the race, and you've done a really good job and had a really great race, but your team leader has had a bad day and hasn't delivered. And you can have this really strange feeling as well after the race, where you're really happy for you, but really upset for the team. And learning how to deal with that with everyone and different cultures and languages has definitely been a challenge in my career, but something I think that's really rewarding. Yeah,
maybe it's a bit like getting best on ground or kicking a few goals at the footy, but your team still lose, you know, it's mixed feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now you mentioned at the beginning it was your losing streak, if you like, that really drew you to the sport, or drew you to the sport. It's obviously that's not what gets you excited about cycling now, and you've been doing it for so many years. How have your reasons changed? Obviously, like I said, it's not about that anymore. Like, what is it that drives your passion about the sport these days?
So I've really found in the last few years in particular, my sort of niche, I guess you'd say, in being the team captain. So of my team, my French-based team, basically I make when I'm in the race, I don't do every single race because we often have normally six riders per race, and that's split between everyone, but I have normally a heavy race program. And I make the decision. So we race with radios, so we can always talk with each other and talk with the team car as well. But when something happens tactically within the race, a decision needs to be made straight away, and I make the decisions in the race. The girls must follow what I say. If they believe I'm wrong after the race, we discuss it, and I'm wrong. If it's wrong, it's my fault, but they have to do what I say in the race. I extend that role off the bike to also, mediating between the riders and between management and riders as well. So you essentially have to run a bit what's going on and feel the scene that's happening with everybody.
So are you saying there's sometimes a discussion when you're trying to make a decision, or do you just hear what's happened and make a decision yourself based on that incident?
Yeah, so I make the decision and I let the girls know straight away. Sometimes there is time to discuss, but generally there's not. If there's somebody attacking to go up the road, like in a breakaway, and we're not there, for example, I will call someone specifically that I can see is not stuck in the middle of the group to go directly.
Okay.
And then, of course, we've had pre-race meetings, so we always have a general plan based on who we're protecting or what the course is best suited towards, and how people are feeling, etc. But, at the end of the day, it's a job. And so I basically sort of run the show on the road. It's not up to me to get the result, but I need a team leader, the person responsible for getting the result. I need them to be just focused on them and nothing else. So if that means that I have to make sure that everyone else is doing their job so that rider can deliver at the end of the day. And I think for it all to come together, you need your team leader to have a lot of confidence in you. And I've sort of really found this role, I think, is really important in a team, because otherwise you end up with 7 riders not quite sure what's going on, and you can have a team car telling you what to do, but they don't know what's going on in real time, because they could be 1 kilometre or 2 behind the race, and often they don't have TV coverage. Sometimes they do, but it's often delayed in the car. So it's a really key role, and it changes a lot, the results. And I'm starting to see it come through also now in the national program. So I'm starting to find my feet there within our national team as well. So I think that I really get a lot out of seeing the younger riders in particular build into their roles and get a lot of confidence in them. And I like to encourage that, and also like through their training and even going and working with the management to make sure that everybody has like race goals individually as well, because otherwise you see young riders in particular always just riding in support of other riders and they're not progressing. And it's hard to balance that across a whole season with everyone with different talents and everything. But
personalities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy sort of planning it all and trying to piece it all together and then seeing that all the way through to when we cross the finish line, basically.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, that sort of leads me on to my next question. I was going to say, you know, that, you know, obviously as you progress through a career, eventually thoughts of retirement start popping into your head. And yeah, like, what have you put in place around that? You know, like, I'm thinking it's going to be along the lines, some sort of management. You love bringing things together and people together and managing different personalities, as I said before. So what are those plans?
Well, so I've recently, last year actually, I finished a university degree in urban and regional planning. So planning, a different sense, obviously more in the development perspective. So I've done 3 months of work as part of that degree with a private consultancy in Port Macquarie in New South Wales, and really, really enjoyed that. And that consultancy have said, come back when you're finished cycling, we'd love to have you. And I definitely want to take them up on that.
For sure.
So at the moment I have that in the back of my mind, but with the Olympics, they were delayed for 1 year. I haven't been to the Olympics. I was the reserve for the Rio Olympics, and for women's road cycling, we have a maximum of 4 places. When we're used to having 7 or 8, it's quite a small team. So that's a goal for me now next year to try and make that squad. And then in 2022, the World Championships are in Australia. So I would like, I currently am in negotiations for a 2-year contract that will take me through to the end of 2022. And then I'll probably look at moving into a planning career.
Yeah. You plan to move into a planning career.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, just one final question really, and I guess it's a 3-part one, not letting you off lightly at the end. If you were speaking to some junior athletes and you could give them 3 pieces of advice, what would that advice be?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, something similar not too long ago, actually.
I was thinking, how could that be possible? Because I haven't sent you the question, so.
Yeah, some things I would have liked to have known at the start of my career, maybe. So it's sort of similar. I think that it's really important to not care what anyone thinks in the sense of focus on yourself. And it might sound something simple, but we all care a lot what people around us think. But I think that it's really important to not worry what everyone else is going to think. And if this is what's right for you, you know that, and you keep doing that. I think it's really important to stay curious and ask questions. For me, I've been exposed to some really good people that have helped me, but also some people that are simply there because they think it's their job and I don't agree, like some nutrition coaches, for example, and some strength and conditioning people that may or may not have given you the best advice. And I think it's important to always question. If you're not sure on something, ask why. It's okay to ask why. And if somebody doesn't like that, then maybe they're not the best person for you to be listening to, because I think that you should always be allowed to ask why.
Sure.
And thirdly, I'd say to always just keeping on.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit silly, but in cycling, like it can always be worse. If you have a down moment, it can always be worse. So 2 years ago, when I broke my arm and ripped up my face and I was in hospital, I was actually in hospital with another Australian. We were in Holland, and she'd crashed in the same race, but not in the same crash, actually.
I was about to say, not into you, I hope.
Not in the same crash, but we managed to get put next to each other in the hospital, which was nice. But she'd broken like 5 bones, including her jaw and collarbone and shoulder blade, and her face was also, we both needed a plastic surgeon, and it was not good. However, we both raced at the World Championships together last year.
That would have been a great moment for you both.
Yeah. So, I mean, it can always be worse in whatever situation you're in. It can always be worse. And I think that that's a really good mentality. And that's what I've always had. So even the situation now, yeah, I can't race, but I can ride outside. Some of my teammates couldn't ride outside for 7 weeks.
Wow.
So, I mean, it can always be worse.
Definitely. And of course that applies to everything outside of cycling,
Exactly.
you know, as well.
Exactly. So I think that's your mindset is really powerful and important. And I think it's probably more important in the bad times than it is in the good times.
Yeah.
It's easy in the good times to keep going and to keep pushing because everything's going well and going good, and you're getting lots of maybe recognition or reward for it. But when you're struggling or it's not going well or there's no one to support you, that's when it's important to recognize it can always be worse.
And it's definitely not all bad for those guys that couldn't ride outside for 7 weeks, because you know what? That's fantastic training for tonight's indoor race, the virtual race.
Exactly. And they're in the European time zone. So
yeah, so exactly. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, Lauren. This has been great. And yeah, hopefully we'll get you back for another 10 before 10 at some point in the future and catch up with you and see how you're going.
Cool, sounds great.
Hey?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
And just out of interest, is there any way to actually catch the show tonight?
Yeah, so there's an app, and also on Facebook, I think, but there's an app called GCN, Global Cycling Network.
Yep.
They're broadcasting the race live. They also have a summary of the race each day if you don't want to stay up till midnight to watch the race. But yeah, it's tonight is stage 2. There was a stage last night, but I'm only competing tonight, and there's 5 stages in total.
Yeah, great. Well, best of luck with all of it tonight and in the future.
Thanks, guys. Okay.
See you, Lauren. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, bye.